Back-to-back wins for the New York Yankees as they defeat the Kansas City Royals 4-2 in a game that got really exciting late. Max Fried pitched pretty well, not quite as sterling of a performance as we'd seen the last couple of outings, but he pitched well enough to keep the Yankees in the game. 6 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, 2 earned runs. An MJ Melendez homer in the third, and then Bobby Witt doubled homer run as well in that same inning. And that was really it for the Royals offense as the Yankees shut them down once again. And the offense came alive in the bottom of the 6th inning where Michael Wacha and company worked themselves into some trouble in that 6th inning. Judge singled to start, then Bellinger struck out, Goldschmidt struck out. But then things got really interesting. Jazz walked, Volpe walked. They took out Wacha for Angel Zerpa, who immediately came in and walked Austin Wells to put the first run on the board for the Yankees. And then the monster hit of the night is Jasson Dominguez with a 3-run double to left field. Right-handed batting in this off of the lefty Zerpa. And that pushed the Yankees in front 4-2 for good. And that was obviously the at-bat of the night for the Yankees, doing all their damage there with 2 outs in the 6th inning. But, Jasson Dominguez had a monster game here. 3 for 3 with those 3 RBIs, a double, 2 singles. He's now up. He's raised his batting average to 275. Made a couple nice plays in the outfield before getting replaced after his 3-run double by Trent Grisham, who made it a monster play that very next opportunity in center field. But this was another strong game for Aaron Judge. Good to see Jasson Dominguez play as well as he did today everywhere as he continues to gain confidence as a youngster. But we talked about on yesterday's show, this is a team that's going to go as far as their rotation is going to take them. And Max Fried has been excellent for them. Gets his 3rd win of the season. The Yankees have won all 4 games that Max Fried has started so far this year. Luke Weaver got 4 big outs out of the bullpen. And Devin Williams had his cleanest save of the year, his 3rd of the year. No hits, no walks, 1 strikeout, a very clean 9th inning for him, which was also very good to see. I'm not going to lie. I was sitting there like, oh boy, here we go for the Devin Williams experience in the 9th. But Yankees fans did not have to deal with that at all. And overall, just a really, really fun game for the Yankees. And I want to talk about some other topics around the team for most of this podcast. But for those that did not get a chance to watch, wanted to give that quick recap as well. And then for tomorrow, keep an eye out. The next 2 games are Amazon Prime games, the next 2. So it's not just the typical Wednesday game. It is Wednesday and Thursday. So I know there are some arrangements that need to be made by some, particularly in the New York market, to get those games. I still haven't fully figured out what the correct combination of MLB TV, Prime, local market you need to get those games. But check out social media and you should be able to find out how to get them. But tomorrow night, Clark Schmidt makes his season debut, 7:05 p.m. Eastern against Chris Bubich, who's been really, really strong this year. So we'll see if the Yankees can complete the sweep of the Royals. And just as importantly, let's see how sharp Clark Schmidt is. He looked pretty good in his rehab starts, but he's going to be a key piece of this rotation, and it's going to be really important that he is able to give them the best starts that he possibly can, as we've discussed on this podcast before. So that is the preview for that. And then obviously they will go to Tampa Bay to play in their spring training ballpark as the road team with Will Warren on the mound against Taj Bradley on Thursday. But I want to talk about a couple of these other storylines surrounding the Yankees. I feel like they're probably a little bit more interesting as we head into the day. It started to take off a little bit on Monday night, but the quotes from Juan Soto really started to make its way around and generate a lot of discussion on Wednesday. And I'm going to read to you the quote that was given to the New York Post and was talked about just how different, it is, you're not playing for the Mets versus the Yankees, the lineup differences and whatnot. And he said, quote, "It's definitely different. I had the best hitter in baseball hitting behind me last season. I was getting more attacked and more pitches in the strike zone. I was pitched different last year." And that caused quite a stir because there was a combination of people who were like, why is he still talking about the Yankees? What does this mean? The general, like, yeah, no, duh, you were going to get pitched differently with Aaron Judge hitting behind you. And then there was a column from my former colleague, John Heyman, about that Soto should probably just have not said any of that. Just stop talking about the Yankees, stop talking about the lineup. There's no way that those comments were going to come out. There was no way that they were going to be taken as anything other than insulting for Mets fans, and maybe even the guy that's sitting behind him, and Pete Alonso, who, by the way, is having a monster start to the season, homered again last night. And, by the way, Juan Soto's homered in back-to-back games, too. So he's doing just fine. But to me, I think this is much ado about nothing. I know whenever you get quotes like that, and it obviously involves, two of the best players in the game, both of them playing in New York, this is something that's going to become a story. Judge quickly shut that down. Basically said, "Look, I'm not going to go back and forth on this. Pete Alonso's a great hitter behind him. He's going to be just fine." And like I said, both those guys homered on Tuesday. So it's one of those things where if you read the full article, I don't know. This isn't, look, I am a big J journalist. I have a journalism degree from a 4-year university. So I understand the job that it takes and what's expected when you do these interviews with players. I also understand from talking to a lot of players and coaches throughout the years. In sports I've covered, Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, the National Football League, college football. I mean, I've been in a lot of locker rooms over the last 10 years. And I guess, probably closer to 12 years now. And so I understand the concerns players have. And so I try my best to kind of see both sides of an issue like this. This, to me, feels like a case of a quote in context. Like if you were in the room having the conversation with Juan Soto, doesn't seem very inflammatory. But when you isolate it on its own and add some of your own context to it, it becomes a story. Juan Soto has talked about his place in the lineup, both during his time with the Yankees and in the offseason. If you also remember the spring training interview he did with MLB Network, I believe it was, before the year, and he was asked who's the best hitter of baseball, he said him. So you're kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation there, because he got some blowback from people saying, oh, why does he think he's the greatest hitter of all time type of a thing? And then why does, now it's like, well, shouldn't you consider yourself the best hitter in baseball and not Aaron Judge? You're in a no-win situation. To me, this is a case of a story that got created based off an isolated quote and then the media cycle attaching to it. And the New York Post did this interview, and then the New York Post also did another story on Tuesday talking about why Soto shouldn't have said anything. And we could talk a little bit about how I consider this kind of the ESPNification of sports media coverage, of making a story and then creating a story out of the own story you've made and makes it a bigger story. Like the New York Post choosing to isolate that quote to publish made, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. Those were said, but that was made a story because of how it was presented. So then you're going to also write a story off of that to say that shouldn't have happened. Like it's this whole thing of like where ESPN will say we'll have a take at 9 a.m. and then spend the next 3 hours on 3 different shows debating a take that they are the ones that created in the first place. That is kind of the ecosystem of really sports journalism and, quite frankly, a lot of political journalism right now. And again, everybody has the right to their opinion. And I say this with the person that wrote the column about Soto. there are a few people I have more respect for in the industry than Jon Heyman. I worked with him closely for a couple years. I was his editor. I ghost wrote for him. I went out to dinners with him. I am a fan of who he is as a person and a fan of who he is as a journalist. I am not criticizing him for writing a column. What I am criticizing is, I think, everybody, the collective you, the overall reaction to this, because this is a big nothing burger. And I'm glad Aaron Judge shut it down on Tuesday when asked about it. Juan Soto is fine. He's having a fine season. The Mets are going to be fine. They're also off to a fine start to the season. And oh, by the way, Pete Alonso was on a freaking tear, hitting behind Juan Soto. So I think everything's going to be okay. But I did feel like I wanted to comment on this because it was such a big topic in the New York sports world, and because it obviously ties into the Yankees from last year, ties into the Yankees from this year, and it ties into Aaron Judge. And again, much ado about nothing. But I felt like it was kind of consumed baseball social media for the last day or two. So wanted to address that there. But moving back on to the Yankees, excited to see how they can finish off this series with Kansas City. A sweep would be really huge for them before they head out on the 7-game road trip before they finally get an off day. And look, its rotations looked good when they've had the opportunities. I'm sorry, I say the rotation. Max Fried at the top of the rotation has looked really good in every opportunity he's had this year. I know things were a little bit shaky in that second game of the season. It didn't matter because the Yankees scored a bajillion runs, but but since then, he's been stellar. And to me, a good start from Clark Schmidt is going to be vital because they're going to need big innings from him this season. And if he can start that out on Wednesday and help lead to a sweep, boy, would that be sweet. But we'll talk about it on the Bombers Beat podcast tomorrow.